Hey guys, it's coreross and Weapon 6 News. So in this video we're going to be looking at balancing graphs for attackers over a year-long period. So let's start with a history of these graphs. So originally they were actually only going to be internal only. They weren't going to get released to the public. The reason for this is the developers thought that the information would be misinterpreted, which it definitely has been, and I myself have definitely done that too. But I believe it was Epi who actually wanted this to be released to the public so that they could get a good idea of why they were choosing to do stuff. And now actually looking back at this information a year later, it does actually make a lot of sense, and it actually shows how much they have actually improved the game with the balancing team since these graphs were introduced. So in this video we're going to go over the attackers graphs. In a separate video we'll go over the defenders. So we're going to start with year 3 patch 1.0. Of course, just like every other graph, this is ranked, PC, platinum and diamond. And I think this shows how much improvement the balancing team has actually made to the game and our experience as players. Because if you look at it, there's 4 operators above 50% pick rate, and pretty much everyone else is underneath 25%, with Thermite being the only outliner there just above 30. So looking at this, most ranked games back then in Platinum and Diamond PC would have had a Lion, a Twitch, an Ashe and a Hibana. And that would have been pretty much it. They would have been in most of the rounds with a few other operators slapped in there. So the repetitiveness of those ranked games would have been huge, because you would have been up against the same team composition routinely, which would have made the game very repetitive. Now I would argue that the reason Rainbow Six Siege has lived so long is because new operators get added into the game all the time, and because of the balance changes all the time as well. It keeps the game fresh, it keeps things changing, and us as players, we need to adapt continuously. And I think that's really what makes it a great game. It also makes it very hard for new players or returning players to come back into the game, but it's that depth that really keeps Rainbow Six Siege alive. So let's analyze the data in the first graph. Now, of course, the developers are trying to get all the operators as close to the center as possible. So a pick rate of just under 30% and a win delta of 0%. Now, of course, the developers know that they're never going to be able to achieve that. They're not going to be able to get all the operators in the center. It just isn't the way it's going to work. But if they continually try to, it should make the game nice and varied. It should keep the game alive, and it should keep the game interesting. So let's start with the high pick rates. So of course we have Lion, Ashe, Twitch and Hibana. Now of course Lion, this is when he was introduced, so this actual graph is his first season, and you can see he's doing very well. He's overpicked and he's too strong, so he's managing to win with a win delta of 1.5%, so way better than Ashe. But we can see that Ashe's pick rate is way higher at the above 70%. Of course, this is both bad for those two operators, which means they'll probably all see tweaks in the future. We can also see Twitch there with a pretty high pick rate, but our win delta is actually really good. We can see Hibana is actually a little bit too weak, but she's getting picked a lot. And then on the left hand side of the graph we have the underpicked operators, and unfortunately it's almost every single other operator apart from Thermite who's managing to creep above that, although his win delta is pretty bad. And we can see that the global abilities are king right now, with Finka, Dokkaebi and Lion up there in the top 4, although Blitz has managed to push himself in there, but only just. We can also see that Blackbeard's actually quite balanced at this point. He is winning more games than he's losing, but he's actually not too bad. He's quite close to the center. We see Zofia and Sledge being quite close to the center too. Of course, Sledge continues to be the model operator until we get to the end of all the data. We can see that Glaz, IQ and Fuse, although they're winning more games, they're just not getting picked enough. Like, they're just not there. They're kind of specialized operators, so they're not really coming in that often, which is a pity for them, of course. And then in the underpicked and too weak category, we have Monty Ying, Buck, Thatcher, Capital and Jackal. And Jackal by far doing the worst. And although Capital is doing a little bit better, of course he's getting picked a lot less. The same with Monty, he's also getting picked a lot less as well. So let's see what happened once the balancing team started doing some changes. So let's take a look at this graph alongside the next one. So we can see that the first round of balancing changes didn't really seem to work too well. Finka managed to push herself up to a crazy 6.5% win delta which is insane. She's not actually getting picked that much, but she's kicking ass when she gets picked. So those players that are picking her are doing insanely good. We can see that the first round of nerfs to Lion had a dramatic impact on his pick rate, but not his win rate. His win rate actually increased. We can also see that Ashe started a meteoric rise to be the most powerful operator in the game, coming in with a 70% pick rate and a 2.0 win delta. So she is kicking ass right now. We can see that Twitch has slightly improved, but not by much. We can see that Habana with her nerfs is now getting picked almost the same, a little bit less, but her win delta has dropped. We can also see that in the underpicked and underpowered category, we've got quite a lot of operators. We've got Fuse, Ying, Buck, Thatcher, Jackal, Capital, and Monty down there. We can see that Zofia and Sledge are the model operators, and Thermite's almost joined them there too, being some of the perfectly balanced operators. And we can see, of course, Lion, Blitz, IQ, Blackbeard, and Glaz managed to be underpicked but pretty strong. And we can see that Dokkaebi has also managed to push herself up in pick rate, and she's got a pretty good win rate there as well. A little bit lower than last time, but not by much. Now, I would say the first round of balancing didn't seem to go that well. It looked like a lot of the operators kind of scattered in the wrong directions. So let's see how things went in the next season. So as we continued on, we can see that we have some rather big changes. So Finka absolutely got our ass nerfed crazily, dropping our win delta down to almost 0%. We can see a Lion there managing to go down to 0%. Sledge showing off his perfect operator capabilities by being right in the center. Thermite actually managing to push himself up in win rate and pick rate, along with Zofia, Maverick all up in pick rate. We can also see that Twitch yet again holding that kind of 50% kind of range with the pick rate, and Ashe coming in at 70%, although her win delta has dropped back down to a much more reasonable almost 0%. Now we can see that Blackbeard's become a bit of the king of the win delta. He is winning quite a lot of games now. We can see that Glaz is also taking over and becoming a much more powerful character as well. And we can definitely see the downfall of all the global abilities. Finka, Dokkaebi, and Lion have all completely dropped down and are much more reasonable win deltas now. Monty's managed to make himself a quite good little push up into the positive win delta. IQ has dropped herself right back down, and we can see in the 2 week and underpicked, we can see Fuse, Ying, Blitz, amazingly, Capital, Jackal, and Buck, although Buck is getting close to that centre, and Thatcher's not doing too bad there too. So I would say at this point the balancing team seems to be doing quite a good job. They've managed to bring people a lot closer to the centre of that win delta, which is exactly where we want people to be, and it's a lot tighter. It's actually really good, and there's a few outliners, but not too bad. And of course, Ashe being 70% pick rate, it's not great, but you know, we're getting used to it at this point. So let's move on and check and see what's happening in the next season. So Finka is back. Finka is back with her win rate going above the 2.5% win delta, and she is kicking ass yet again. Blackbeard's still kicking ass. Dokkaebi's even managed to go up a little bit, but that could be, you know, it could be the margin of error with the data when it comes to her win delta increase there. Ashe still at the 70%. Twitch is still sitting up there at the 50% pick rate, and her win delta has gone up a touch as well. But look at the center. We are now seeing quite a collection. So we've got Sledge, Zofia, Hibana, Thatcher, Buck, Maverick, Nomad. Like, there's a lot of characters in that center area, and the real spread between the win deltas is really, really good. They've done a really good job. Of course, Finka's all the way out there. Blackbeard's out there too. But overall, I would say a quite impressive improvement. So that leads on to our final graph. So of course, this is Year 4 Patch 1.0, so the very first season of Year 4. Now, we look at this, and it's impressive. If we compare this to the first graph, the win deltas have been really compressed down, and although we still have a few outliners, so Jackal and Finka there, it is pretty good how the win deltas have actually been brought tighter and tighter together, and we have a lot of operators, a lot of them, really close to that zero line. It's actually significantly impressed over a year of work. That's good. You know, now pick rates are a bit still all over the place, but we have seen Ash get dethroned from her 70%. She's now down to 50. We can see that Twitch is still sitting around the 50% point. She seems to be one of the most consistent operators. If I had to guess, I think she's going to get nerfed next, probably at the beginning of the next season. I think they'll be tweaking her a little bit. But to me, the real standout thing is if we go back to that very first graph, we can see that above 25% pick rate, we had literally 5 operators. That was it. There was 5 operators above 25%. If we go and look at today's graph, we have 11 operators above that 25%, which makes it, to me, seem a lot better. Like, there's a lot more balance, there's a lot more variety every game you play of Rainbow. I think there's much more kind of a balance going on there, and we are seeing much more different team compositions when it comes to playing, and I think that is the greatest of things. But yeah, it's impressive. I think they've done pretty good. There are, of course, operators that they've definitely neglected. So Fuse is probably one of them. He's always sitting there. Although I guess it is hard because he's not always been underneath the win deltas. And even right now, he's on a positive win delta. So maybe it is hard to kind of just tweak him into a good place that he's more enjoyable to use, but not more powerful. And we can see that there's so many operators now in a really good win delta range. So Fuse, Blitz, Capital, Dokkaebi, Blackbeard, Maverick. Maverick's actually the perfect operator right now. He's taking over Sledge's spot because Sledge has gone shooting off with a pick rate there. But IQ, Buck, Thatcher, Thermite, Zofia, Sledge, Hibana, Ash, they all have perfect win deltas. Like, they're all really close to that center spot, and there's not that many that further out as well. Now, of course, yeah, like I say, pick rates is definitely an issue, but I think they're doing a good job. So that's a year of the balancing team's work in action right there with these graphs. Let me know what you think. I think this shows that they've done a pretty good job with attackers. Like I say, we'll go take a look at defenders next in another video and see how they kind of line up and see if they've been doing a worse job with them. So guys, I want to hear your opinions in the comments below. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below, and I'll catch you next time.